this is Kimberlea, and Yoga Snack is our bite-sized podcast where Robbie and I serve up nourishing discussions on yoga, astrology, nourishment, and mindset.
We mix wisdom with personal experiences to serve up quick, insightful conversations that nourish your practice and add flavor to your daily life.
Ready for a quick bite of wisdom? Let's dig in.
Welcome to Yoga Snack. Today we're going to talk about Asteya, which is non-stealing. And this one's a pretty good topic to dive into because it can show up in a number of different ways. Show up on our mat, it can show up in our relationships, even with our relationship to ourselves. So we're going to dive in a little deeper. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, you guys. The third yama is an interesting thing because on the surface, it's like stealing. That's really obvious. Like, I don't take what doesn't belong to me. I don't I don't go and shoplift in the store. But, this is always an invitation to go beyond the surface of things. And non-stealing is really something that if we look at closely, we might realize like resources from the earth. Do we take more than we need? Something that I really look at closely and try to do better because it's against my nature is I try not to be late because I think we steal time from other people. Sometimes we can be inconsiderate. We can steal someone's thunder. What I mean by that? Has that ever happened to you? Like, I used to do this and somebody would be sharing some really amazing thing. And I didn't mean it as trying to steal thunder. I wanted to connect with them, and say like, oh, me too, or we're the same, or wow, but that one upping people where if somebody's like, just saying they're going on a trip, like, oh, I'm leading my first yoga retreat and it's to, X, Y, or Z. And, and I would jump in and be like, yeah, I led a retreat in Costa Rica too. And, this year I'm going to Bali or, something like that. And it's like, that's not okay. Unless they're sort of inviting you into that conversation. So stealing someone's thunder. I'll tell a really quick story about my own personal life. When I was getting married way back when I was 22, I was such a baby. Our family dynamics was really interesting because both my parents had just divorced each other and they had new relationships and none of them were solid. And at my wedding, I wasn't really interested in having a bunch of people stand in as family that weren't family. And so I set a really hard line in the ceremony itself. And I said, only family can come. And that's by, family by marriage is fine and everything. And so anyways, my dad wasn't really thrilled about that. My mom understood, but when I said that to my dad, he's like, well, this better be across the board. And it created a lot of turbulence. And I even said, I was like, look, if you don't want to be at my wedding and you don't want to walk me down the aisle, that's okay. That's probably one of the first boundaries I ever set in my little life, especially with a parent. So anyways, he decided to respect the boundary. And the night before the wedding, we were at setting up the reception hall because everybody was welcome at the reception, right? Like everybody could come there, but I just didn't want photos of people that weren't going to stick around, so anyways, I was sitting there really overwhelmed. So, it's the night before my wedding. There's all this stuff swirling around and I was just like overwhelmed. I was also pregnant when I got married too. So there's like this other layer of massive sobriety where nobody else around me was sober, which actually became a theme in my life. So, I was sitting there, really tired, overwhelmed, needed to get to the place I was staying, the hotel for the night, and then get married the next morning. And my dad's girlfriend at the time um, walked in, and she sat down, and she, put her hand out in front of me, and I just was sort of confused. And again, I'm going to frame this. This is the night before my wedding. She's showing me an engagement ring my dad gave her.
Oh.
Uh huh. And she's like, he proposed. And she also wanted to come to the wedding still the next day. And I was just like, absolutely not. You're not stealing my thunder. This is not about you. This is about me. And, and I was just flabbergasted at this, like, stealing the thunder moment. And I'm just like, does anything ever get to be mine? Do I ever get to be, in the spotlight and it's just about me? And so that was that was a really dramatic stealing the thunder moment.
That's a
It was,
pretty big one. That's a pretty big one. My goodness.
yeah, yeah. So there you have it.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Like I have done the same thing where you're just trying to relate with somebody. That's a different thing than showing up and be like, "Me too." you know, but like trying to relate and trying to share like, "Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about," or I can see why you're so excited about the thing that
Mhm.
that's a normal like conversation back and forth, but there is that line to walk about,
And
or am I trying to one up this person, or you know
right. And sometimes we are, right? And if we're looking closely at what our motivation is, that's a time when we can kind of pause, right? And then discern like how to share. And a lot of times when I'm uncertain, I pause and I ask, I was like, can I share about my experience too? And I ask permission
yeah,
before I interject. And I've tried to do that more and more. That's been my practice more and more is asking before I just layer in. And I mean there's times where you're in a very organic conversation and you know that it's right to share and it's okay and you're not one upping them. So it's not about running a fine tooth comb through everything, but it is examining our motives underneath things and seeing, like, are we trying to take away from their moment in the sun and their enthusiasm by one upping someone? So I think too, as a yoga student first, before I'm a teacher, I've had my students ask me, like, why are you always crediting someone else or your teacher or trying to cite a source for things? Um, and I think it's because I'm really full of care because I want people to know that I didn't just come up with this. Like, this isn't my original idea. This might be something that I've innovated, or that I've taken in and regurgitated in another way. But I always think it's really important to try to include and bring in where it's come from when you can. I'm not always pristine about exact sources, but I at least try to allude to the fact that I was listening to a podcast, or this came from my teacher, or my philosophy teacher, or this book. And as teachers of yoga, I think it's important that we're giving credit to our sources and where it's come before. And a lot of times people don't know where it's come from. And so it's looking at the lineage of yoga, even in the heritage and the practices that have come up over the year, and maybe looking at educating ourselves a little bit on understanding where this practice has come from, because appropriation, right, is also stealing.
right, yeah, exactly. I Monday morning I taught, and we're sitting there, we're getting to the beginning of class, And the only thing that I could think to say, like the only thing that kept popping in my head was to like tell them to find what feels good. And I think that is trademark to Adrienne Mishler. Like that's her like tagline. And I basically was like, has anybody ever, do you know Adrienne, Yoga with Adrienne? Like, and none of them actually did. And I'm like, well, she has this great line, and it's like the perfect line to say in a lot of situations. But it's like that thing is locked in with her. So like trying to find something else to say. But I think there's a, like you said, I think you can say, Yoga with Adrienne says this thing. You
Yeah.
know,
And there's a point in time that we start to assimilate information and knowledge, and it does start to become our own,
yeah.
right? But when it's not lived and it's not practiced and we don't have experience with it and we haven't like molded over, and then I do think it's important that we still try to find places to give credit to where credit is due, because there's
Mhm.
lots of people that work very, very hard, at doing things. I even like I get a little like resentful on Instagram when I do my 1 minute reels, and I have all these people of, they're like, oh, I'm going to take that and use that in my class. And and I know I'm giving myself away there, and there's a point where I do want that, and it makes me happy that people are learning from me. But I'll tell you, when I have some sweet yoga teachers that are like, I always say that, this is what I learned today from you, or
Mhm.
this is my source of information. It's coming from that, and that helps me for some reason feel a little bit more settled at expanding and offering things out into the world, because it is hard, to try to make a living in this world and to create things and to give it away, and then people grab it and assume it as their own without really identifying where that original well is. And I'm not saying I'm the OG with any of this stuff, but I mean, there's stuff that, that I've said and I've done that just come up from this really organic place. You were there when I was teaching chair yoga, and I was like, the bendy straw,
All right.
what a bendy straw is. And to be able to, bring that in. And there's something that's very much coming from deep inside of me. And that's sort of an artistic expression, and so yeah, I think it's important. And then, even inside of this industry, I've had an experience where, you plan and you collaborate with someone, and there's this intention of creating projects, and then they take it and they make it their own,
Mhm.
or they start collaborating, taking your idea and they take it and they collaborate with someone else without any sort of, authorization or even a conversation about it. And I think that's kind of slimy. We should all be willing to have hard conversations, and even if it's about parting ways or taking something and evolving it on your own, that there, especially if there's a deep relationship there, or a colleagueship there, that I think that's really speaks to integrity when we're able to have hard conversations. So yeah, so that's even inside of the industry what I've experienced, and at the end of the day, I'm like, thank you for revealing yourself
Right.
by not having integrity or not having the conversation about, um, you know, this collaboration or whatever. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Non-stealing is literally asking you to live your life with integrity, so that in any situation you're not taking from anyone or yourself or the future. Like it's that's part of it is living um, living within those bounds that you've set for yourself.
Mhm.
You know, sticking to what you've said.
Yeah, upholding yourself
Yeah.
from a really um, deep place of integrity. Brene Brown has this chapter in one of her books where it's strong back, soft front, wild heart. And she actually evolved that saying from a Buddhist monk named Joan Halifax, who had strong back, soft front, and she added the wild heart.
Mm,
And the strong back is integrity, right? And even in our physical body, the strongest muscles are in our back body. So when we say strong back, it's like, what is your scaffolding? What is going to uphold you when things get hard and difficult, right? And then we can also still stay really soft in the front of our body, meaning our permeability to life, to let life still come in and through us and change us, but that we still have something that's upholding us, and when we're not looking at that, or integrity isn't um, the scaffolding of our life and the way that we want to move through the world, we tend to there's words for it, we lack backbone, right?
right.
Yeah, and that's like, it's like a snake. It's, we become kind of snaky in the way that we move through the world, which snakes create anxiety around for people, right? I
Right.
don't care who you are, even if you love snakes, there's still an initial shock factor around snakes, and that snaky behavior isn't, it's not comfortable, and it's not the way that life can be generative and evolve. So, hmm.
Yeah, yeah, and now that we're talking about it, I'm pretty sure I need to go back and credit our the person who created our music for the podcast in the last couple episodes. I may have violated Asteya the last couple episodes by not crediting that, but I'll go back and edit that for sure.
Fix it. We'll fix it. We'll
So that
try
we're
to
living with integrity.
living with integrity to the best of our ability, right?
Right.
Because then we get into that place of perfectionism, or, gosh, we become really self righteous and require everybody to, like, so it is a fine line.
Sure.
But I'll tell you, living with integrity is um, is a non-negotiable for me. Like, that is something that I look at, and really work with. And it's a practice for sure. It's changed over time, because I don't think I was always using that as a scaffolding for myself. Bend the rules, take here, take there. Um, and that's, I don't want to be like that anymore. I don't want to move through the world.
Yeah.
So yeah,
We
there
we
was
go ahead. Sorry.
no.
I was going to bring up how in a previous episode we talked about stealing the chocolate chips out of the freezer, and how that is robbing from your future. So that's sort of
Hmm.
my cats do the same thing. I don't know if anybody saw the little kitty that was sitting behind me earlier, but
That's why it's
they
Robbie and Bobby today. I'm
Robbie and Bobby
watching this on
tag
top.
team.
Mhm.
The we were they go nuts for their crunchy food, and at night my one cat, she just like devours it to the point where, like, in the morning before I get up, she's usually like, okay, it's time. And so there's a little bit of like, even she is stealing from her future by gobbling all those little bits down right away, and then in the morning she's like, may I have some more, please? But probably not as nice as that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's interesting. Stealing from our future self, right? By not putting in the work now and expecting the gains and the benefits. You had brought up, earlier when we were talking before we started recording, you brought up a term that you read in, the book Yamas and Niyamas by Deborah Adele. Let's make sure we give credit where credit is due.
Yes.
What was the?
Adhikara. So she talks about in the book how adhikara essentially the right to know or have something. So I think of it as like, um, like putting in the work to be able to receive and keep the thing that you actually want. Like she talks about how people who win the lottery, if they don't have the financial knowledge or have put the things and the foundations in place to properly utilize those funds,
Mhm.
more often than not, that stuff is gone in like a year.
Yes.
And then they're back to the same old. But that's the container that they've built for themselves, is
Mhm.
to be in that situation. So even though you might go through a windfall, if you don't have the container to hold it, it's just going to seep right out. It's going to slip right through your grasp.
Yeah. Um, in my training, in Anusara training, we would hear the word adhikara a lot, and it translated to studentship. But um, I think what you're speaking to is the right is a better definition. But the term being used as studentship was sort of that layer of learning, like if you're just going to show up once a month and study yoga, right, or take an asana class, that's not the same as somebody who has a daily practice, who seeks out teachers and workshops or retreats, or like has deepened their knowledge and their commitment to it. So to expect that you're going to have the same benefit as somebody who has taken this seriously, right? More seriously, or whatever. I can't come up with a better word than that. Hopefully, that doesn't offend anyone. um, but that rigor is going to result in something different, and that your studentship then is in question, right? That we look at that, and then my philosophy teacher, Douglas Brooks, he he talks about um, as you advance your studentship, your questions change. So the only way to advance your studentship is to know what questions to ask. The types of questions you're asking is actually demonstrating your next level of studentship. So you might, like we talked earlier too, like what is a chakra? Like that would be a really entry level question, and it's important. We have to ask those questions. I'm not saying there's like a hierarchy and that you get to skip over, you're a better person, but we have an entry point, and then once you get that question answered, right, you can just walk away from it and know like what is a chakra in that very broad stroke. But then maybe the next question is, oh, well, how many chakras are there? Oh, well, what are the names of the chakras? Where are they located? Well, what does that do? And I mean, and then all of a sudden you start to open all of these doors inside of your studentship. And none of them are wrong or bad. It's just you can't expect to have the same outcome as somebody who's just going to ask that initial question, right? Because your energy hasn't been there. And when I taught acrobatic dance, oh my stars, like these children, and even worse, most of the time they're freaking parents,
Bet.
wanted their children to be, somewhere that they were not ready to be. And the kids weren't putting in the work either. Like that's the other thing. Like just because they show up to practice doesn't mean they're putting in the freaking work, you know? And the only time they would like try hard is if they had an audience to perform to. And I'm like, it doesn't, like, at the end of the day, what I was doing, especially the nature of dance that I was teaching, we were on a hard dance floor and they're throwing these really strong, powerful tricks. Or at least we were trying to lead up to that. And if I wasn't creating a foundation for them and integrity inside of their bodies, I'm actually stealing from their future self, because they might have knee issues,
Hmm.
they might have hip issues, they might hurt themselves, they might have back issues. And so my job as a teacher was to really set a foundation. At least this is the way I teach everything like this. It's like we need to lay down a foundation that we can build upon. And when you don't have that foundation and you want to go throw crazy tricks, and you don't have that solid foundation, we're robbing you from your future self. So,
Yeah.
yeah, parents don't always understand that either. They get so, that'll be the next one, clinging
Right.
to I've excommunicated myself from the dance world. It was very dramatic. It was wonderful and beautiful, and I love dance. But the industry itself, based around children, is really sometimes disheartening. There's some really amazing teachers out there, doing wonderful things for these kids too. So I don't want to steal from them and say that it's all bad, but um, yeah, it felt like a little bit of a cult sometimes. I did not drink the Kool-Aid, so I exited stage left, quite literally. So
Seems to happen in most every group, or
yeah,
there's always that aspect.
yeah, it sure can.
In pop culture with this, um, immediately when I read this in the book, I thought, have you ever seen the show or heard of the show Rick and Morty? It's sort
Yeah.
of adult animated cartoon. Um, well, in that show, there's this grandpa, and he's a scientist. He's a brilliant scientist, and he's evil as well. But uh, um, the family needs help with a bunch of stuff, and he's busy, and he can't help like he normally does. And so he has this box that he's created, and has a button, and you push the button, and this blue being, comes up out of the box, and is basically like, "Hey, I'm Mr. Meeseeks. Like, let me help you with whatever you need." So all the family members end up hitting this button and are asking for help. And the daughter, she asks to become like the most popular kid in school. Um, the wife, she asks to become a more complete woman. And all the while, the husband's sitting there and he's like laughing at them, like you're doing it wrong, like you're not asking for the right stuff. And meanwhile, he asks to take 2 strokes off his golf game. And next thing the daughter, she ends up completing her task. She becomes the most popular girl in school. The wife, she becomes a more complete woman. And before you know it, the husband has like 150 of these me-sigs around because he keeps just hitting the button, hoping for more help and more help. And they keep giving him advice, but ultimately he doesn't have the container. He hasn't put in the work to knock 2 strokes off his golf game, in a short amount of time.
I
So, they all had the capability. They have all, they're able to reach that goal because
contain
it's inside of them, and so he just didn't get it. And so that's sort of what it reminded
and
me of.
telling
Like,
them you're not asking for the right thing.
right. He was laughing. It's anyway, Rick and Morty. That's the credit for that one.
Fantastic. We go all over the place for such
Right.
guys. Whether it's the kitchen or pop culture or
Right.
oh, I when I cook sometimes, like I try to cheat time, like I'll turn up the temperature too quickly, or I'll like that's what I think like with cooking, where I'm like cheating on the timer. I'm trying to hurry things up and not let things simmer and not give them that time to really become flavorful. So that could also be something. I use my Instapot now because I'm like, I'm still kind of cheating on time, but still doing. But I got upset because I was like, oh, I'm going to make garbanzo beans. And all the recipes that I would find for Instapot, it still said I had to soak the beans for 6 to 8 hours.
Oh.
Time was only 15 minutes, but once I had them soaked, but I was just like so annoyed. What do you mean I have to still soak the beans? Because for black beans, I don't have to do that. But I was trying to still steal time away, and make it faster than it was. So I ended up soaking them and cooking them the next day for 15 minutes.
That's where you just go get a can.
Right. I know. I know. Man, stove, like,
Not the same.
beans have a different, like, little bite to them. I do on the Instapot. I soak them for 6 to 8 hours, and then I put them in and I cover them with water, and I throw a half an onion in with the skin on.
Okay.
I'll take the skin off and all. I do that with my black beans too, but so chickpeas, and then I put some salt in it and maybe a little garlic, and then 15 minutes, and they're delicious, and they make
Mm.
the best hummus.
Ooh.
Or falafel, or so yeah.
I love falafel. I like, I could eat falafel every day.
Tzatziki. Mm.
Mm. It always comes back to food by the end.
Always, always. Well, that's why we're yoga snack.
That's right. That's right.
You have some holiday baking stuff up right now, right? You're
I
doing.
do, yeah. Zen Sourdough Bakery on Instagram if you're local to Longmont or around the surrounding area. Yeah, plenty of holiday offerings, pies, cookies, breads, anything. Take the load off of you so you're not stealing from your time with your family.
That's right. Yeah, yeah, they're delicious. I my fluidity series is up on YouTube. One class a week. This week is just a 5 minute introduction, but 5, 10, 15 minute classes once a week. Really good. About creating more flow in your life and ease through asana, breathing, pranayama. We look at TCM, which is the Chinese medicine lens as well, a little bit every week. So I think too, investing in yourself like that, like you're investing in your future self instead of stealing from your future self by creating, consistency. So the other thing, I have an Insight Timer series, the Insight Timer app. I'm doing the 5 elements right now, and so on Saturday mornings, 8:30, anywhere in the world, 8:30 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. Though you can take that class for free and donate if you like, if you feel it's valuable. And then I'm going to have some exciting things in the new year, some destinations around the world, and doing some yoga retreats that I'm working on right now. So I'll have some more info about that coming up
Yay!
soon. Yeah,
How
yeah,
exciting!
yeah. So lots, lots, lots. So if you're not on my email list, you can find my website, kimberlysmar.love, and or find me on Instagram and just reach out, comment below. I'm happy to connect with everyone. We're so excited to keep this rolling. I'm going to be um, out of the country for part of December, but we're going to try to keep this rolling, and it should be fun. And New Year's Day, I'm going to do 108 sun salutations in Loveland, and I'll have an intention circle where we pick a word for the year to really focus our future self around a word or a phrase so that we're, looking at it because that consistency actually matters. It's what we do every day that's feeding our future self. It's not what we do every now and again or once in a blue moon. It's really how do we fuel that? And so I picked a word for the year. My word was attend. So I wanted to really focus and hone in and attend to the project at hand or my relationships at hand. What was your word for the year,
My
Rafi?
word was leadership. If you can,
Oh,
if
you're right.
you're watching,
Yeah.
leadership, and that's definitely one you can't just put on a band that says leadership and think that you're going to become a leader. You got to container to, and you got to live with integrity to show up as a leader. So that's constant lessons this year on that one.
Indeed. Yeah. Well, we are so thrilled to keep sharing this with you. We would love to spread this out. So if you like this, please comment, share, hit the like button. That actually all very much matters for us. And we want to know what you want to learn more about. I'm interested in building community, not just an audience. So I hope that resonates with you, and you continue to engage with us and stay connected. So,
Beautiful.
all right. Well, I guess that's it for now. We will
See you next time.
time.